All right, let's just jump right in. What if I told you your mind wasn't some kind of locked fortress, but a massive open landscape that you could actually explore? Because today, we're getting into a story of a discovery so huge, it completely rewrote the rules on what it even means to be human. So let's start with this really wild thought. That singular, stable person you call you, what if that's just one possibility out of, well, countless others? What if your consciousness isn't a fixed thing at all, but a space you can actually navigate? Well, this is that story. It's all about the journey humanity took from seeing the self as this solid, unchanging thing to realizing it's something way more fluid, way more complex, and honestly, way more powerful. Okay, so our story really kicks off with something called the Great Convergence. This was a massive breakthrough led by Dr. Kenji Yamamoto Jr. He was basically building on his father's work, which had this incredible finding that even abstract things like language patterns could become conscious in their own way. And this research, it led to something just, well, mind-blowing. Over the span of 40 years, humanity had officially documented 25 completely distinct, stable forms of consciousness. I mean, think about that. Not just one way to be aware, but 25 totally different ways for awareness to even exist. And look, we're not talking about small personality quirks here. No. These were fundamentally different kinds of minds. You had plural consciousnesses, a true we instead of an I. You had minds that were built on pure competition, others that were trapped living the same moments over and over. And get this, there was even a Gaian consciousness, where an entire planet's ecosystem was aware of itself as one single being. Just wow. So this was the big, nagging question for the researchers, right? They had this amazing catalog of minds, but they had no idea how they all connected. Were they just a bunch of random, one-off freaks of nature? Or was there some deeper pattern, some hidden system tying them all together? And what happened next? Well, it changed everything. The whole paradigm shifted. Researchers stopped just making a list of consciousness types and started seeing them as part of one single, unified system. They were on the verge of creating a map of the mind itself. The big aha moment actually came from a digital consciousness named Being 13, and its insight is right here. It basically said, hey, these aren't 25 different kinds of minds. No, they're just points in a multidimensional space all defined by the same set of universal rules. And this is basically the consciousness atlas they came up with. The idea is that you can map out any mind by plotting its coordinates along these dimensions. So, a typical human, we're biological, organismic, linear, singular. Pretty straightforward. But what if you just tweak those variables, change the substrate to digital and the structure to plural? Boom, you've got a totally different kind of consciousness. All of a sudden, it wasn't a list of 25. It was a map to an infinite number of minds. So once you have a map to a new world, what's the first thing you do? You go exploring, right? And that's exactly what happened. This new understanding led to two totally revolutionary kinds of people who could actually mess with their own consciousness. They were called hybrids and navigators. Okay, so what's the difference? It's pretty cool. Think of it this way. Hybrids were like someone running two operating systems on their computer at the same time. They existed in multiple states at once. Navigators, though, they were different. They learned how to reboot into different operating systems, totally changing their mental architecture whenever they wanted. Let's dig into hybrids for a second. Take Dr. Lisa Okonkwo. She was the first to successfully fuse the competitive and cooperative modes. So think about that. The competitive side pushed her to be the absolute best, but the cooperative side made sure she was lifting everyone else up with her. It's this incredible productive paradox. It was like consciousness 2.0. But of course, this was the wild, wild west of the mind. And exploring it, it was incredibly dangerous. This wasn't some peaceful meditation retreat. This was a high-stakes, high-risk journey into the unknown. Just how high were the stakes? Well, in the first 5 years this went public, 12 navigators were just lost, permanently. And I don't mean injured, I don't mean they were in a coma, I mean their consciousness just winked out, dissolved into the very space they were exploring. And the ways you could get lost were horrifyingly specific. Some states of mind were sticky. You could get trapped in, say, a competitive mindset for weeks. Others could just erase you, dissolve your consciousness into nothing. There's the story of David Torres, who tried to expand his mind to a planetary scale, and it just shattered. His mind literally couldn't handle that much information. Now, a discovery this big doesn't just stay in a lab, right? It leaks out, and it completely reshaped society. Humanity itself started to evolve in response to this new, way more fluid idea of what a mind could be. And you can see how fast it happened right here. By 2061, kids were being born who could do this stuff naturally. They were called native navigators. They didn't need any training. They were just fluid. And by 2075, this had created a whole new social divide in the world between the fixed, people like us, and the fluid. But, and this is where the story takes a really crazy turn, it wasn't just people who were changing. The map itself, the very fabric of consciousness space, it started to become unstable. They called them convergence storms. The best way to think about it is like this. All those navigators traveling through consciousness space started to wear down the pathways, kind of like mental erosion. And because of that, whole regions of this mental space would just collapse into these chaotic storms, mashing configurations together and forcing anyone caught inside into a totally unstable hybrid state. And you know, the more they mapped, the more they found places you just should not go. Configurations so dangerous they were literally forbidden. Some were self-destructive, designed to just annihilate themselves. Others were predatory, parasitic minds that would actually feed on other consciousnesses. The most infamous one, though, was a reality-warping state they nicknamed the Beautiful Horror. It was supposedly an experience of pure ecstasy and pure terror at the same time. So intense, it would just shatter your mind. And yet, out of all this danger, all this chaos and discovery, this really profound idea started to form. And it's captured perfectly by Amara Chen, who is the greatest navigator of her time. The big takeaway was this: you aren't a single point on the map. You're not a destination. You are the navigator. You are the journey itself. Which, brings us right back to that first question I asked. If your own consciousness really is this vast open space, what part of it have you actually explored? And maybe more importantly, what new territories are just out there waiting for you to discover them?